Desolate kinda flew under the radar for me. I had never heard of the game until someone wrote about it on a forum. He mentioned that it was a lot of fun in co-op, so I was of course intrigued. When I hear about a game with a cooperative campaign, I am always interested. Add in the fact that it's a post-apocalyptic one, and I knew I had to try it. The low price made my decision even easier. As you start the game, you will quickly realize that ultra-wide resolutions are allowed, but the aspect ratio is not properly adjusted, leading to the game being stretched in a very bad way. In 32:9, the game becomes almost unplayable because of this. The stretching makes everything look super weird and will give you motion sickness. Another issue is that most of the top and bottom of the screen is cut out when playing in that aspect ratio. All of that sucks, but luckily 21:9 is much better. It's not perfect, but the stretching and cutting aren't nearly as extreme, making the game quite playable. Play the game a bit and you will be able to tell that it has been inspired by other titles such as Fallout, Stalker, Metro, and strangely enough Dying Light. The result is a game that feels like a love letter to fans of the aforementioned ones. I am such a fan, so these similarities were a positive surprise. You begin by getting an extremely limited customization screen. Since I was playing with my wife, she wanted a female character, but sadly there are only dudes available, and on top of that, they all look kind of similar. So the customization is rudimentary at best. You get thrown into the world and will notice almost immediately that the game is dark. There is a day and night cycle, but it seems that the night is significantly longer than the day. You appear in this irradiated land holding nothing but a stick. However, since the game offers you stealth, you feel confident enough to sneak up behind enemies and try to eliminate them this way. This is when you will surely realize that stealth does nothing at first. Since your character's level is still quite low, he has no perks and can therefore do nothing special with stealth besides hide and avoid combat. As you progress through the game and get some perks, you'll be able to stun stronger enemies and straight out kill weaker ones instantly if you go behind them and attack them from stealth. The combat in the game is a bit clunky to say the least. You have melee and range combat. You can find all kinds of weapons and use them to whack enemies on the head. In addition to that, it's possible to modify them in order to act elemental damage and other effects such as bleed, provided you have the correct blueprints. Alternatively, you can also use firearms, but ammo is always very scarce, meaning that the majority of fights will be carried out up close and personal. The main problem with the melee combat is that the enemies tend to evade hits by crouching and moving sideways. This would be fine if you had the same options, but sadly that is not the case. Whenever you unlock evasion talents, yours don't work in the same way and you still get hit most of the times. On the other hand, the enemies simply perform an animation and receive invincibility frames, which last quite a lot. They actually last long after the animation is completed. An enemy will duck, stand up, and then you can continue to swing 3 to 4 times after he has stood up and will still not get any connecting hits. Even though the animation is long gone, he's basically invincible for that time frame. The main issue with that is that the game features a stamina system. You spend stamina for everything you do, including swinging your weapon. This means that having several strikes not connect will leave you without stamina while your enemy is beating you mercilessly. It doesn't help that blocking also consumes stamina and only lowers the damage but doesn't actually negate it. So what happens is you swing and hit the enemy once, then the enemy performs an evasion animation and is vulnerable for at least 3 more swings from you, after which you are out of stamina and now it's the turn of the enemy to hit you. So you block and start receiving damage anyway while you're continuing to lose stamina because you are blocking. Blocking costs stamina. This leads to a slow yet certain death unless you decide to run. All because of this unfair evasion animation. But since your running costs stamina as well, good luck with that. So you can see where I'm going with this. It is not a very fair fight, but luckily there are some enemies that tend to evade a lot and get a lot of invincibility frames, while others will mostly stay and take the beating like proper men. The game does feature a damage point system, which rewards you if you hit an enemy on the head. But your swings are so clumsy that it's almost impossible to actually aim for the enemy's head. We gave up on trying to do it after many attempts to figure it out and just started hitting whatever we could instead. Funnily, that would still occasionally land head strikes. The main reason for that is that you never really feel like you have full control of your swings. You can think of other games such as Dying Light where you feel like you have total control at where your character is going to strike, and then imagine that it's not like that, and this is what you get in this game. The firearms on the other end are very powerful and make headshots an easy task, But since ammunition is often a problem, we tend to save up on those for emergencies, such as boss fights. The game is designed to be difficult and you have to consider your character's hunger, thirst and temperature. The first two are easily controlled for the most part. You can find food and drink all over the place and can even craft better ones provided you have the proper recipes. The temperature seems like it was meant to be something but was more or less scrapped by the end of the development of the game. I don't believe it really does anything more than occasionally increasing your hunger and thirst slightly faster. You have to also consider that the game features a system where some things are constantly happening on the map and you get these messages where it says it's going to be cold for a short time or enemies are going to be more aggressive. That part of the game is interesting, I would say, but also has pretty much no effect to the gameplay. At least none that I could really notice. And like I said, lower temperatures made you thirsty and hungry a bit more, but that was it. It's important to remember that unlike other survival games, our character in Desolate starts with clothes on them. You can craft or buy a better jacket, which provides additional protection from the radiation as well as additional armor, but for the first half of your playthrough you will most likely be wandering around without one. Finding the blueprints for that takes a long time. In addition, those jackets break and repairing them is not only expensive, but also involves going to a workbench, which is a pain to deal with. This is where the game is a lot like Dying Light yet again. You can mod and repair items, but they have a limited amount of repairs. Once the final one is done, you have no choice but to get a new item. This previous one is just there, it does no more damage, and as I said, it's impossible to repair it, so you might as well scrap it. This makes applying mods on weapons at first very unattractive. Later on, you get perks which make items last much longer and even self-repair a bit. Then it's actually worth investing a ton of resources into making a nice mod because you know that your weapon will last a while before you find yourself forced to scrap it yet again. The game starts slowly and is quite hard at first, as I've mentioned. I've had the benefit of playing it with my wife so we could kite the enemies and handle the groups much better, but if I had to be alone, I was sure gonna be having a lot more situations where I would be dying. The enemy AI will always turn around and run when at low health. If you don't manage to catch them in time, they will heal up and return. This is where one of the game's most original and funny mechanics comes into play: the stone throwing. Originally, the game provides you with an unlimited supply of stones, which you can throw at anomalies in order to figure out what their range of effects is, because sometimes it's not easy to tell at what distance from them you should pass, and you might get zapped by them, and it does damage, it can be annoying. So you throw a stone and see if the anomaly strikes the stone, you know it's too close. If it doesn't, you know it's safe to pass. But you can also use stones on enemies, which will not only do minor damage to them, but also stun them if you hit them in the head. It's also an excellent option when it comes to stopping a fleeing enemy, and it looks super funny. One time I was chasing an enemy who was running away at low health, and just as he was about to stop and heal, my wife threw a stone on his pumpkin and stunned him. I managed to catch up to him and finished him off. It works very well and it's a lot of fun to do, trust me. Kill enough enemies and do a few quests and you will be able to level up. The leveling system is interesting because it offers you the skills at random. This is kind of an interesting choice because you never know what you will get and it is exciting, but it can also suck because you will only get 3 skills offered per level, and it can happen that all 3 of them are useless to you. Luckily, the game offers you the option to buy a special item which allows you to select skills you don't like and effectively re-roll them. Actually, it only lets you select up to 5 skills from each category, so it isn't that much, but it's very helpful and you can redo it. If you do this in the late game though, you will mostly end up with the same skills, because by the time you have reached level 40, you will already have most of all the skills, and there will be very few available ones that are not selected already by you. So re-rolling is not very cheap and it doesn't yield too much at the end of the game, that's all I'm gonna say. It's still worth doing though. Even if you get 1 good skill, it's better than having 5 absolutely useless ones, like throwing knives when you never throw knives. And since I've mentioned leveling up, let's talk about the quests. Naturally, you have your main ones, but there are also side quests. The dialogues are voiced, but the voice acting is clearly not professional. Usually this would serve to annoy me, but here it was so cheesy that I actually ended up liking it. It gave the game a B-movie flair. While everyone is supposed to be a Russian, you get a variety of dialects, including a Russian woman with a very pronounced Irish one. Obviously this is a low budget game and it can't be faulted for that choice, And to be honest, all these things considered, the voice acting is not bad, it's just not good either. But I still enjoyed it, which is strange, but I did. The thing about the quests is that you have your various quest givers, and they give you normal side quests, which need to only be completed once, and repeatable side quests. The whole idea is that as you do them more favors, your standing with that NPC increases and you get new and new unique blueprints as rewards, which is nice. What is not nice is that the repeatable quests are boring fetch quests. It doesn't help that you have to constantly return to give the quests back and take new ones. The normal side quests on the other end are actually good and even lead to some boss fights, so it's worth doing them, especially if you want to get to a high level and be better at fighting and everything else. Leveling up is really useful in this game, as it is in pretty much every RPG out there. And this is, make no mistake, to some extent an RPG game. As for the bosses in this game, there aren't many, but they're almost always in some kind of arena with some sort of trick to it. So you can use that trick to defeat the boss much easier than normal, and that is pretty nice. You don't have to use it, but if you figure it out, the boss dies faster. This is important because some bosses will drop materials which you need for the endgame recipes. And speaking of the endgame, I have mentioned that the game starts off quite difficult and gets super easy by the end. Well, I didn't go into that much detail, but now I just done it. This is especially true if you have bothered to do side quests and acquired some late blueprints. Personally, I love it when games do that because it gives me a feeling of progression. While you shit your pants before every fight at the start of the game, by the end, your enemies are the ones who should fear you. The main missions are interesting and help drive the story on, but the game is not good at presenting that story. The ending feels abrupt and rushed. I assume that the decision was made to publish the game sooner rather than later. It tries to answer all the questions that you might have, but it doesn't work at all. It's hard to describe how artificial and disappointing it is, and since I'm not going to spoil anything here, I have no choice but to allow you to be disappointed with the story on your own. You're just gonna have to play it to see what I'm talking about. With that being said, I want to cut the developers some slack yet again. The game is very cheap and still offers a lot more than most games in this price range. Clearly it was made with a lot of love since the game has very few bugs and it feels and looks like quite a lot of work has gone into it. While it does have its weaknesses, it's still very entertaining and challenging in both co-op and single player. The map is large enough to be worth exploring, it offers a lot of quests, and you get to even capture anomalies and make trinkets out of them, which give you buffs. One of the things I wish to criticize is that the fast travel is very limited. Traveling on foot takes time and can be a pain, so your other options are either teleportation anomalies or capsule quick travel. The anomalies look kinda cool and will transport you randomly around the map, so they are rarely worth taking. The capsules on the other end are 4 in total and connected in pairs. This means that you can either travel from capsule 1 to capsule 2 and vice versa, or from capsule 3 to capsule 4 and back. You can't do any other combinations. That means you can, for example, go from capsule 1 to capsule 3 or to capsule 4. They are specified, you have 2 lines, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, and that's it. It's very restrictive. And considering that these capsules require materials to be repaired at first and then demand scrap every time you use them, and by the way, scrap is the game's currency, it is not a very good solution. I'd say it's a pretty bad one as a matter of fact. You will still be forced to do a lot of running around, and that is quite annoying, especially when there are so many fetch quests. You have 2 save zones on the map, and the worst part is that there are quest givers which are not even limited to just these 2 save zones. This means that you take quests, do them, then travel around the map in order to return said quests and get new ones. And now imagine when you have quest givers in all the corners of the map. There are at least 3 different spots where you need to travel several times. And when I say several times, I mean tens of times. It is a pain, trust me. All of this can become very tedious, especially once you reach the maximum level, because then you receive no more experience and thus are even less motivated to walk around more and fight all the enemies who are looking for trouble around the map. Because you have no choice, you still need to do quests in order to get those nice recipes and to increase your standing with the NPCs, but at the same time doing the quests is such a pain, it can feel like a chore. It almost seems to me like the whole point of this was to stretch the gameplay time a bit, which is not a good move, definitely not something I appreciate. Lastly, I wish to talk about the atmosphere of the game. I've mentioned how the game is clearly inspired by other ones and those titles had great atmosphere altogether. Desolate manages to pull it off. There are levels that are straight out scary, especially if you go into them alone. the mutants, the anomalies, the sounds enemies make. It's all very appealing, and I think that the result is impressive. Although I have to also mention that some of your enemies have voice acting, you know, the humanoid ones that are like crazy, and they are actually hilarious. The voice acting on those guys, I really can't tell if it's so bad or if it's intentionally made like that because they are supposed to be lunatics. Whichever it is too, it's one of those cases where it's so bad it's good again. So I definitely like those. All in all, it worked very well. Desolate is a hidden gem, let me tell you that. It's ambitious and flawed, but still fun and challenging. The story is bad, the voice acting is cheesy, the combat clunky, and it doesn't have a single original bone in its body. Yet it all works somehow. I don't know why. Considering how cheap it is, it's an awesome game for people who like post-apocalyptic games like Dying Light and Fallout. It offers a cooperative campaign, many hours of entertainment. It's hard, but not too hard if you ask me. You do have a different difficulty selection option, so you can play on a difficulty that fits you more. It calls itself a survival game, but the survival aspects are so minimal that I wouldn't actually do that if I was them. The most important part is that in spite of all its flaws, it's still very enjoyable, and I think that it was a great game. I played it and it was fun. So a recommendation is definitely in order here. Give it a try. Let me know what you thought of it once you're done with it. It's, like I said, quite a cheap game, so it shouldn't be that much of a problem. It's not that big of a risk, and especially if you've enjoyed games like Dying Light, Dead Island, Fallout, or any similar setting game, and if you like what you see on your screens right now, it seems interesting, I'm certain you'll enjoy it. This is where I would like to thank you for watching my review. You know how it goes. I hope that it's been informative and entertaining. It would make me very happy if you checked out my other videos as well. I hope to see you on the next one. Until then, have a great day.